It's Leslie Meredith with Breakbulk Events and Media. I am joined by Jeongmin of McKinsey Global Institute. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. I understand you had some really interesting information to share with our audience here at Breakbulk this morning.
That's right. So we did an in-depth research on the changing nature of globalization, and we found out that there are 5 major trends that are reshaping the global value chain. The first trend is about the goods, right? So a smaller share of goods out of total production are getting traded, right? So the intensity of good trades are declining. And some people think of this as the deglobalization, right? But then in our view, it is actually not, right? Because the total absolute value of trade are still increasing, and the declining intensity is just reflecting the shifting center of gravity toward the emerging market. And this emerging market, they are building their local supply chain. Therefore, they are consuming, more of what they produce, right? So that's the first trend. Second trade is about services, right? So conventional wisdom says services trade are not that important, given that it's only 20% of the total trade. But our research found out that it is actually not, right? It is growing much faster than goods trade, 60% faster than goods trade, and then a lot of the value of goods are actually taking input from services, right? So therefore, service sector matters.
Can you give us an example of that? Something real world that we can all relate to.
Yeah, so for example, if you look at the automotive, right? So it's on hardware, right? But then, 10% of automotive values are related to software, right? And then we expect that the ratio can grow from 10% to 30% by 2030, right? So it is important, right? If you look at the smartphones, right? So the hardware cost could be about, manufacturing cost could be about 40% of the total value, but then the 6% of the value could come from the intangibles, right? Or related to, R&D and innovation and so on, right? So therefore, the services, intangible assets matter a lot, right? In terms of this global trade and value creation.
And I imagine that would also be causing a shift in employment in the job market.
A shift in employment? Or,
In
yeah.
the job market, where there are more jobs as we look ahead for those in software or the services industry as opposed to manufacturing.
Yeah, so that's right. So as the economy evolves, right, so the share of service sector will continue to grow. And then in fact, this is related to the third trend that we have observed, right? So if you look at the global trade, the conventional wisdom is that the trade is to take advantage of labor cost arbitrage, right? So produce something in low-cost country and then ship it to a high-cost country, right? In reality, it is not, right? So according to our analysis, less than 20% of the total trade is to leverage labor cost arbitrage. So meaning that huge majority of the global value chain is built by considering additional factors, right? Such as the proximity to market or the innovation capacity available in local economy, resource availability, and so on, right? So therefore, it is less about labor cost, but more about serving the local market better. In that sense, right? So the labor cost, the labor market shift also plays a role, right? So there's a trend of automation, right? So technological development, right? So therefore, you can put your footprint closer to where your market is, right? So therefore, the trade is becoming less labor intensive, but more knowledge intensive.
Okay. Do you have a fifth one?
Yes, so it is about the the regionalization of global value chain, right? So the conventional view, the previous decades of globalization is about building a long, supply chain, right? But then now the supply chain is becoming shorter and shorter, right? It is becoming regionalized, especially in Asia Pacific areas, right? So more than half of the trade happening in Asia Pacific is about intra-regional trade, right? So the regional value chains are emerging, and that in that sense, the role of China will continue to matter, right? So whether China can become a destination for import for neighboring economies, right? Whether that's goods or services, will continue to matter.
Okay. Last question, when you look forward, do you see these trends continuing as you look onto the horizon?
Yeah, so these are big, long-term trends that are likely to continue, right? So therefore, from business perspectives, right, you need to think about, what's the implication to your own business, right? So therefore, how to, deal with these long-term, changes, right? So for example, you need to be more flexible and agile in terms of designing and reshaping your own value chain, and you'll need to think about where to compete across the value chain, right? So where are bigger sources of profits are getting generated, and how do you participate in that trend?
Oh, excellent. All right, so I am sure that many of our industry members out there would like to know more. How can they keep up with your research?
Yeah, so they can simply go on our website,
Okay.
mckinsey.com/MGI, and they can download the full research report.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been fascinating.
Thank you for having me here.